Hey everyone, this is Oscar from Underdog, and today I was listening to Taylor Swift, as you do as a 35-year-old male. I was chilling at the piano listening to some singer-songwriter stuff, and then this Taylor Swift song came on. It's a song called Don't Blame Me, and in that song you hear this super juicy Supersaw sound. It's the kind of sound that usually in electronic music, when people hear this sound, they say, hey, that sounds like Flume. Flume is, in my eyes, the artist who has taken this sound and made it a bit of a signature of themselves. But today I thought it was exciting to find it in a Taylor Swift song, and I thought, let's just recreate this sound as a bit of a synthesizer recipe. So this is the result that I got to. Okay, so what are some defining features of this? Well, first of all, it's a polyphonic synthesizer that's playing multiple notes at the same time. It's playing chords. The sound sounds not like a sawtooth wave, not like a square wave, not like a sine wave. What it sounds like is something called a supersaw. And it's a sound that you recognize when you learn how it sounds when you take two sawtooth waves or many sawtooth waves and detune them slightly compared to each other. I'll show you in a moment exactly how to achieve that. But first, when you're trying to mimic a sound like this, you want to first find the notes. You first want to figure out what is the chord progression so that then you can sound design over that. And in this case, this is the chord progression. It's in C major, and it is the 6th chord of C major, the 5th, the 4th, the 1st, the 2nd, the 6th, and then for the turnaround, we do 1, 2, and back to 6. Whenever your 6 is the first chord, you can also consider that the song is probably in minor. But because every minor key has an equivalent major key and every major key has an equivalent minor key, I often like to move everything to the major key and then count from there. And so when it starts with the 6, I know that it's going to have the flavor of a minor progression. These chords, you could find them by ear if you have that kind of ear training. But if you don't have that kind of ear training, don't be shy to simply go find them here on ultimateguitartabs.com and just fill them in and then figure out the speed of them so that we can move on to the sound design. And now, the sound design. Step 1 of sound design is figure out your oscillator sound. Remember from our synthesis tutorials, the oscillator makes a very big sound, and then we cut into that using a filter. So right now we're designing a sound that's too bright. And for this, I'm using Silent. Silent is a synthesizer that makes it very easy to make supersaws. When you get your hands on Silent and you initialize your patch, what you'll see is that up here are the oscillators, here's the filter section, and down here is all the modulations, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to leave the filter completely open, and then we're going to look at the oscillators, and especially the left oscillator here. What you do is you leave it on sawtooth wave, right? And then we're going to stack a whole bunch of sawtooth waves on top of one another. And that's going to sound something like this. Doesn't sound particularly good, right? But what happens when you start detuning all of those sawtooth waves compared to each other? Notice this. Supersaw, baby. Supersaw. You can go too far. And then it all, goes too far. But there's a sweet spot hereabouts that's so beautiful. When you can spread them in the stereo field, you get this super wide, beautiful panorama. Then you turn off re-trigger, so they don't always start at the same waveform at the start of the note. And then the second oscillator, I do the same, but an octave lower, without stacking as many voices, because in lower octaves that gets a bit busy. The idea here is just to create some warmth, so this sounds full. Beautiful sound, no? And now, this sound that's way too much, we're going to cut away using a filter. And the filter, we just have to set it to low pass. There we go. And so now we get this nice deep supersaw that's not completely different to a Reese bassline. A Reese bassline is often when you take two sawtooth waves, detune them against each other, play them very low, and then you get something kind of similar to this. They're cousins, let's say. They're related. They're not the same, but they're related. And so when you open this up, you get this enormous swelling of energy, and that's just gorgeous. Can we just take a moment to appreciate the Supersaw. So gorgeous. And so now what we need is we need to get that wobble. We need to get that wobble, right? So we're going to have to use LFOs for that. And so LFOs, we're going to set it to maybe a triangle wave. And we're going to set the rate. When I move this rate here, you can see it move up here in the right. You can see it like that. So yeah, exactly like this. So probably something like 1/8 or 1/16. Let's go for 1/16 first. Oh, and of course we have to map this to the filter cutoff. That's what I was having in mind, right? So we need to move this there and then move this up. See this? Awesome. I think we need to go slower. Nice. Lovely. Lovely. Now, in Taylor Swift's version, there is a pulse towards the upbeat, the offbeat, some might call it. Boom, dum, 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 dum. So the filter opens even more on those pulses. So we can do a second LFO that just moves slower, does the exact same thing. Let's find something like once every half bar. Yeah, perfect. But let's move it in the other direction. So I'm moving it down. You hear this now? It goes. Awesome. And now we can move the cutoff. See this? I'm really digging this. I'm really digging this. So earlier I was messing around, and this is the version that I came to. Also EQ'd it a little bit and added a little bit of a Valhalla to make it sound a bit more epic, but it's basically the same sound. And then I added in a Reese bassline playing the root notes. Oh, and I did this turnaround, right? This turnaround where suddenly I turn off the LFOs and I move open the filter manually. It works well when you put a bass, when you put a drum line on there, totally non-designed, right? This is just a 606 as a metronome. See, it speaks to that. You know, it's like when the kick happens on the turnaround, the air gets sucked out of the room, like a big side chain, like, and then it comes back up. Cool. And then I put under this Reese, this bass line, just to be super deep. And the Reese is just a monophonic synthesizer. It's playing sustained notes that are the root notes of the chords that are playing at that moment. And all it is two oscillators slightly detuned against each other under a filter. A bit compressed, but that's not really relevant. And then also I automate it to close in this kind of sidechain motion here as well. And that's it. This is about as close as I'm going to get to this today. I'm not going to sound design it any further. A very big step up now would be to start sound designing the drums a lot more, because the drums are really what's letting this down, I think. For me, this sound right now is excellent. Nice. If any of this went a little bit too fast for you, do check out my Foundations of Electronic Music course, where we go through all of this, but in a much slower and more structured way, so you can learn from absolute beginner how to become an intermediate level producer and follow along with tutorials like this without any problem, without feeling lost. If you want to know more about synthesis, watch this video on the basics of subtractive synthesis and watch this video on how to learn any synth. If the music theory confused you, watch this video on music theory. Come show us on the Discord channel what you did with all of this. I think I'll use this patch in a track for my Face the Sun project. Go follow that on SoundCloud. And until next time, stay producing, be good to one another, and take care. Bye-bye.